I'm glad that you came to.
Yep, Preston, it's nice meeting you. We've already met before,
Yes.
so hopefully we'll have a very fruitful discussion.
Definitely.
God willing.
My main question is, I've noticed within Islam, there's the Quran, which is read and believed in by Muslims. But then I'm curious about something else called hadiths.
Okay.
And I know that the hadiths are written by different people. There's one by Sahih al-Bukhari, and there are all these other ones. Do Muslims follow the hadiths as closely as they do the Quran, or do they follow the Quran and the hadiths are just fairy tale?
Okay. Very good question, because that will demonstrate to you what the faith of the Muslims is based on. Because as Muslims, we have a foundation of our faith. Yeah. We can't just believe in things just because I think it's right, my gut feeling. We have to have a solid foundation, what makes us Muslims, what gives us the identity of a Muslim, and how we should live as Muslims. So Islam has some fundamental sources, which is the source every Muslim should follow. Okay? The primary source is the Quran, the speech of God, the speech of Allah. Okay? So everyone has to accept that yes, this is our primary source, because God has given the revelation in his speech verbatim through the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ to us, telling us who he is, who we are, what we're supposed to do, what's going to happen to us after life and death and so on. Now, if the Quran, which is the speech of God, were to explain every single details, the Quran is not going to be about the size of this book. It will be huge, right? Okay? So instead of this, the Quran tells us that the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet who is receiving this Quran, is going to explain to the people. لِتُبَيِّنَ. It's called Tibyan, to explain and clarify to the people what God has said. For example, God says in various places throughout, it's a common thing of the Quran, establish prayer for God. You know, establish prayer. If you ask yourself, how do I do that? Allah hasn't told us, oh, first you have to stand and then go in prostration, you have to say this 3 times, or then sit down and come up and then end it with this salam and so on. That kind of detail is not given in the Quran, but the Quran does give, in occasion where it sits fit, about the forms of part of the prayer. For example, you prostrate, or you kneel down, or you make glorification of God, okay? But the actual sequence and the details and so on, which can be easily explained by a prophet. Yep. So the prophet's role is to explain the Quran. He's to explain it. Because the Quran is not the speech of the prophet, not even a single letter, his explanation is somewhere else other than the Quran. Obviously, because it's not part of his speech. So that explanation of the prophet, whether he explained something or he agreed on something, approved something or disapproved some things, okay? His speech and actions, they are also documented and transmitted to us. That documentation is called the Sunnah, the teaching of the Prophet ﷺ. The Sunnah is compiled in the Sunnah. Yeah. So now you have the Quran and the Sunnah, the teaching of the Prophet, explanation of the Prophet. This Sunnah has been transmitted to us in living actions, actions people can see and so on, but they have been also transmitted in books. What the Prophet said, what the Prophet did. His words have been now transmitted by writing.
And
we know that.
Those words.
Yeah, I'm just about to explain.
Were they written when the Prophet was alive?
So these words were written even at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. Initially, they were written at the same time as the Quran was revealed. Right. Then the Prophet noticed the people are writing the Quran and his statement side by side. Now it's going to create some confusion, because how do you differentiate which is the word of God and which is the word of the Prophet? So the Prophet forbade writing the statements of the Prophet at the time the Quran was being revealed. But later on, he uplifted this prohibition. He said, now you can. So there are many companions in our literature we can find that came and said, oh Prophet, can I write this? And and Prophet allowed them to write. So they got their hadith written down. So hadith, which means speech, is a terminology that is used for the statements of the Prophet, his actions, his approvals, his disapprovals, that the Prophet said and did, and that has been taught and transmitted by the people, and they're codified in books. Because when people started writing, then you can have something to refer to. The Quran wasn't only transmitted in memorization, it was also written down. But the Quran was then taught to people by a teacher. The teacher would tell you how to read the Quran. So they're always the second way. Likewise, you have this hadith. The hadith has been narrated and transmitted in written form as in verbal form. So they got written down anyway. Eventually, all of the statements of the Prophet, the hadith got written down. Now what happened is this. Like every other culture, there were people who didn't give the importance of, saying things accurately for their own benefit, for their own whims and desires, right? So these people somehow felt, I need to justify my position in political authority, for example. So I'm going to invent a statement of the Prophet, hadith of the Prophet. And I'm going to say, the Prophet said this. Now this was happening quite early, right? People noticed, what? Prophet said this? How do you know? Tell me, who did you hear it from? Because obviously you did not hear it directly from the Prophet, because Prophet passed away already quite some time ago, right? Name me your men. So this whole science called isnad, the science of rijal, of the people and the biographies started coming by asking, who are you transmitting information from? You said the Prophet said that, okay? You were not at this time, so who told you this? Oh, from X, from Y, from Z, from Fulan, from Fulan, from Fulan. It's fine. So people started looking at, okay, did you, okay? But the person that you're seeing that you said from, you haven't even met him. You've never met him. So that statement, we would say, we're classified by the scholars. Now we are authenticating these statements. This is not acceptable. This is not authentic statement of the Prophet. Because now you are narrating from someone which you did not even listen from.
So there are hadiths which are not regarded as authentic by Muslims.
Yeah. So there are hadiths which are clearly proven to be fabricated, forged, and there are hadiths which are classified to be authentic. Now hadiths comes in different types. One type is looking at the number of people transmitting, and you can have hadith which is like khabar ahad, or hadith which is mutawatir. A large number of people transmitting these hadith of the Prophet ﷺ and from different localities and different people. These are the most strongest in terms of their credibility. Yep. Because so many people narrated. Imagine now, the discussion that we have is going to be transmitted to some people, right? If you have we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people, right? If you have 7 people narrating the same thing, and one person narrating a different thing, you will say, look, all of you heard our discussion, and you narrating a particular statement differently in addition. So we will look at it and say, okay, fine. About your character, are you a person who's always speaking the truth or not? If you don't speak the truth, out of the window. Your statement is not acceptable, because we don't take acceptable statements from people who have known to be lying and deceiving. Now suppose that he was a person who was known to be always truthful and trustworthy. How is his memory? Was his memory good? Did he hear it correctly or not? All of this, how they categorize the hadiths.
Well, I understand that, but what I wanted,
I will focus on
from
it.
a religious perspective, I understand the Quran, reading it.
Yeah.
But are Muslims then meant to read the hadith alongside the Quran?
Yeah, I'm coming back to this point. I want to give you the background of the hadith. So if that gentleman narrated something in addition to that, we will say this is called a shad or ziyadatu thiqa, an addition of a trustworthy narrator. But all the others, when they agreed to, in the jurisprudence eyes, they will take precedence. Because all of them heard, and you added something extra, which is not found by others. So hadith was started to be classified like this, depending on who narrated, how many people narrated, the people that narrated, what was their character, what was their memory, did they suffer in memories later, were they influenced of any kind of a theological, motivation and leanings and so on. So we have categorized books which are clearly authentic. Some of them you probably heard the names. like Sahih al-Bukhari, Sahih al-Muslim, Muwatta of Imam Malik. Okay, Muslims don't doubt about this hadith. Why? They have been rigorously authenticated of the people who narrated them. So Muslims, when we want to know what the Prophet said or did in relation to something, we would go to these sources because we have confidence that this is what the Prophet said. Some other hadiths are categorized and authenticated to be weak. So we will say this is a weak hadith. Okay? So when it comes to taking weak hadith into certain aspects of things, there is lots of different rulings. Do you take weak hadith in your aqidah, for example? You can't take weak hadith in your aqidah. Aqidah means your belief. You can't take something in your belief which is based on a hadith which are doubtful. Yeah? So this is how hadith comes in. So Muslims will go to the hadith because that's the explanation of the Prophet. And the Quran says, if you truly love Allah, قُلْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهَ فَاتَّبِعُونِي يُحْبِبْكُمُ اللَّهُ. Continue the ayah. يَغْفِرْ لَكُمْ ذُنُوبَكُمْ. Yeah. This is how the ayah goes. If you truly love Allah, then follow me, follow the Prophet. Allah will love you and forgive you all your sins. So Muslims will go to what the Prophet said and explained. So our hadith literature, the ones that are authenticated, we are confident this is what the Prophet said and the Prophet explained. We will go there and we will take that in the source of our religion. We have no problem whatsoever with this.
Okay.
And in fact, if you become a Muslim, you would also think that this is what I should do. How did my Prophet explain it? Because the Quran says pray. Now, what am I going to say in my prayer? The Prophet, for 23 years, he demonstrated in every single day how to pray, what to say in the prayers, what to say when you bow down, what to say when you kneel down, what to say when you make, ending your prayer. He demonstrated that, a living example. So the Prophet has to be followed because that's where we know the explanation comes from of the Quran.
Okay, I see.
Sorry, I've been a little bit more detailed, but that's to show you the background.
I understand. And then you have specific hadiths which you're meant to follow. Bukhari and
Authentic ones. We should all follow the authentic
Those are the
ones.
two main ones.
No,
Bukhari
these are... So Bukhari, in terms of authenticity of classification, Bukhari is undisputed.
Right.
Then the next level will be Muslim, yeah, and Muwatta of Imam Malik. And then you have other hadith books. Okay? What Imam Bukhari did, just to give you an introduction, there were so many Sahih hadiths, meaning authentic hadiths around. He was going to compile a mukhtasar, which is called an abridgment of all the hadith from his teacher that he was asked to compile, right? He says that in his introduction. In fact, he has a long title of his book, the Statement of the Prophet, which is an abridgment of the Sahih hadith. What he did, he started having a very, very strict methodology in terms of how he's going to authenticate. So strict that even though in other people's eyes it's an authentic hadith, he had the strictest